Welcome to Decisive Point, a U.S. Army War College Press production, featuring distinguished authors and contributors who get to the heart of the matter in national security affairs. Decisive Point welcomes Dr. Ray Millen, author of World War II Insights on Stability, featured in Parameters Winter 2020 issue. Dr. Millen is the security analyst at the Peacekeeping and Stability Operations Institute at the U.S. Army War College and holds a Ph.D. in political science.
Today we're discussing the topic of stability operations in World War II. Ray, you argue that civil affairs teams were a key factor in Allied success in World War II. Would you please elaborate on that for our listeners?
Yes. So the purpose of civil affairs and the civil affairs teams was to create stability and security in the rear areas, which would permit the combat commanders to focus their efforts on the defeat of the German army, rather than having to worry about the myriad of problems in the rear areas. So civil affairs detachments would be about 8 to 12 men, would enter urban areas and establish communications with the mayor and the chief of police in order to restore governance and law and order. They would also conduct a number of other activities, such as restoring essential services, dealing with or identifying captured equipment or abandoned equipment that they could provide for the Allied effort. By making the rear areas self-sufficient, the Allies did not have to worry about pilferage and espionage and things like that in their rear areas.
That sounds really intriguing. From your research, what would you say were the most important lessons or policy implications that the U.S. military should embrace today?
Right. So one of the key principles of civil affairs and military government was to govern indirectly, meaning that the officers would interact with the authorities, the civil authorities, and they would just supervise their activities to ensure that they were competent, that they were cooperative, and that they were non-corrupt. So if they did not meet that criteria, then the civil affairs officers had the authority to replace these individuals with someone more accommodating. And this happened from time to time in the liberated territories. In Germany, there was the problem of denazification, which made their mission a lot more difficult.
Yeah, and how would we translate that, though, for today, assuming that we're going to have adversaries that may be ideologically rooted in a particular way of life or point of view? How would we go about achieving stability, building or doing good governance in those areas based on what you've learned in your research?
The main thing that I learned was that just because you're affiliated with a party does not mean that you are a hardcore party member. A lot of officials, teachers, and professionals join the party to make a living. Therefore, they may not have been that committed. So after the war, General Lucius Clay, who became the military government of Germany, went through the German judicial process to kind of cleanse the records of these individuals. And so they would go through the proceedings, pay a fine, maybe do a little bit of community service, but thereafter they would be able to resume their position as a good citizen.
Yeah, well, that's an extremely important point. Ray, I'd like to thank you for sharing your insights and your time with us here at Decisive Point. And thank you, listeners, also for joining us this afternoon.
My pleasure. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, Tony.